Good evening and welcome back to the September 6th public meeting. We had a brief recess to consider wording for a motion that Councillor Wagner is presenting. Councillor Wagner?
Okay, I would like to move that council direct administration to prepare an amending bylaw for bylaw 23-17 to include the following in section 28 motions. A motion to rescind a motion which has been passed or reviewed. A defeated motion may be offered subsequent to the meeting at which the motion was passed or defeated if the rescinded motion is brought more than 6 months after the date of the original motion, or a member who voted with the prevailing side may move to reconsider a motion, or brought after a general municipal election which has taken place since the date of the original motion.
Thank you. And did you want to speak to that before we have discussion?
No, other than what I said earlier, it just kind of makes us look indecisive in that, so this may bring a little more to our meetings.
Thank you. Now that we have a motion on the floor, discussion. Councillor Montgomery?
Jonathan, I'm going to pick your brain for a second here. Can you tell me what the current bylaw kind of says about this? Like, did we provide any direction at all on bringing back motions?
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Section 2810 of the procedure bylaw says council may not reconsider an item at the same council meeting that was previously heard to allow additional time for reflection and consideration of the topic before debating it again. So just not the same meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, but it doesn't refer to future meetings. Timeline that way.
Okay. So I don't disagree with the obviously we shouldn't be indecisive. I guess I'll there's a couple of things I'll bring up. One is this doesn't necessarily prevent a motion from being brought back for reconsidering, even by somebody who opposes a motion. And the other issue that I have with it is we have rescinded, just in this term alone, at least a dozen probably motions or resolutions or bylaws. So I would prefer not to tie our hands. I would prefer not to tie our hands in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Wiley?
Yeah, I think that this is going to be problematic. I think we're going to be really putting ourselves in a jam here where we pass a motion, a couple months later, new information is coming to light, or we've gathered more information about it, or somebody in the public has explained it in a way that helps us better understand, or administration has new information, and it's like, well, no, that's against our procedure bylaw. I think what happened tonight is emotions are running high. It was a really heated discussion. Obviously, people feel very strongly about the issue that was at hand, and this is sort of a reaction. I don't think that we should be going down this route tonight.
Thank you. As far as my own situation is concerned, I'm not dealing with the motion on tonight at all, because this potential motion coming to us is something that I lived with in the past as a councillor, and somehow we took it away, and I found it to be something that made us be more careful when we made our votes, because we knew that there was a waiting period before it could come back. But it didn't stop a person who was on the prevailing side from having second thoughts and coming back with it. But it does remove the situation where councillors who might feel very strongly about any issue that comes up in any meeting, if they're on the, for lack of a better word, the losing side of a vote, they could just keep coming back every public meeting and bring it back. And I think back to a situation where we were trying to decide about the Anglican Church, and had we not had waiting periods to it, it could have just been coming back and coming back and coming back. And there is the optics of not being able to make decisions, and about not having decisions that are anchored and will stay, because the way it is now, people who aren't on the prevailing side can just bring something back right away. So I think I see it the other way, that if things we vote on and pass or defeat, if they're brought back at any time by a councillor on the other side of an issue, in essence, it does tie our hands, because we're not making concrete decisions that last. They can be revisited constantly. So to me, this is just a return to the way it was when I was on a previous term of council, and I welcome the chance to get back to that. Councillor Langmaid?
Thank you, Worship. I'm in support of this amendment for the reason that we are tied to our code of conduct, which requires us to support the decisions of council even when we're on the losing side. And the way that our procedure bylaw is written now is because there's no defined procedure on when and how we can bring things back, it's always given me a bit of pause in my little spidey sense gut of going, well, if we can't speak against the decisions of council, then how can we what is the process to bring something back? And in bringing something back, are you speaking against the decision of council? So I actually really I strongly support this motion for giving us that defined procedure on how this can be done while still respecting our code of conduct, and that we should be publicly supporting the decisions of council. So I am in favor of this, and I think for me, just to simplify, it closes a bit of an open-ended question that I've always had and always questioned how I can operate best within. So this provides me more guidance.
Thank you, Councillor Langmaid. Councillor Montgomery?
Yeah, to Councillor Langmaid's point, actually, I'm going to offer an amendment. So I will amend the motion to strike the first 2 points that say brought more than 6 months after the date of the original motion, or a member who voted with the prevailing side may move to reconsider a motion, because as Councillor Langmaid just pointed out, even if you're on the prevailing side of a motion, if you want to revisit it, you are not supporting the decision of council. And so therefore,
Point of order.
It doesn't matter if you're on the prevailing side or not, you are not supporting a motion of council by that logic. Same with if
Point of
it's
order,
brought
Your
back
Worship.
more than 6 months
what
after
is-
the
what
date
is
of the
your point
original
of order?
motion.
What is
The
your point of order?
proposed amendments, Your Worship, do not speak to the nature of the motion.
So
They're in opposition to the nature of the motion.
I'm
It
literally
changes,
just
it changes the intent.
no, it doesn't.
You're removing, aren't you, the first 2
Yeah,
items?
so I'm amending it so that a motion to rescind can only be brought back after a general municipal election, which has taken place since the date of the
Changes the
original
intent of the
motion.
motion.
So you want that one removed, or you want the other 2 removed?
Well, I mean, like, you know, if we're going to use the logic that we're not supporting motions of council, if somebody wants to revisit an issue, then really we shouldn't be revisiting the issue at all, and it should wait until a new council comes, and then the new council can, you know, revisit an
I
issue.
think that comes down to an interpretation. I don't really interpret someone bringing something back as being verbally or criticizing or questioning a council decision and not supporting it. I think they're just bringing it back for more full and fulsome debate. But I guess if you present that amendment, then we would have a vote on whether to accept Councillor Montgomery's amendment to Councillor Wegener's original motion.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, actually, that just because a councillor wants to revisit an item does not mean that they aren't supporting the decision of council. It just means that perhaps there's more information that's come to light that might sway people. That being said, I will withdraw my motion or rescind it. I'll move to rescind my amendment, please.
Okay, thank you. All right, are there any more comments on the motion that's been put forward by Councillor Wegener? Councillor Wiley?
Sure. What about if a counselor is absent from a meeting? So it specifies that if they were on the prevailing side of the motion, they can bring it back. But what if they weren't even at the meeting?
Jonathan and Kara, that would probably be a problem if they were away for the meeting when. But that deals with public hearings, doesn't it? That concept of not being at a meeting for a motion is, it's not specific to a public hearing, is it?
No, Brent's just saying you're not on the prevailing or losing side if you're not in the meeting.
So the piece that you're speaking about specifically is spelled out in the Municipal Government Act, right, around when council can and can't and should abstain and all these kinds of things, right? I think what Councillor Wiley is asking is for the addition around if you miss a meeting, which I think is up to council to discuss and debate, and whether that's something that you would like to amend and put in the motion, and whether council has an appetite for that. I think at this point, like, administration hasn't prepared this motion. We haven't researched this. So I would not like to give an opinion at this point. We can certainly take this away if that's something that you would like us to explore and look into further. But
Okay.
I'd like to reserve having an opinion on that at this point.
If Councillor Wegener's motion is passed, you could still bring back an amendment later to deal with a councillor who may have missed a vote on an issue.
Well, they're going to have to bring this back for 3 readings anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. This has to come back for 3 readings. So if someone wanted to add something to deal with a councillor who misses a vote and wants to bring something back, that could be added as part of the procedural bylaw amendment. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think I'm clear again. Tonight has been a real interesting night. First time back after a month off. Wow. Councillor Montgomery, any more comments?
Oh, no. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
Councillor Wiley?
So I just think it's really important that that's clarified about a councillor absence, because presumably in the future, you could have a council that schedules council meetings, outside of the regular council meeting schedule. If there was a majority that wished to do that, in situations where one councillor might miss, they could pass bylaws, first, second, third reading, and then you'd hamstring another councillor from being able to even question it for 6 months. So I think there would be a problem with forbidding it to be brought back again from councillors that were absent.
So, Kara, if I can just ask you, if we pass this motion, can we also just have a direction to your staff, to Kevin and your staff, to bring back or to possibly offer as part of this something that deals with an absentee councillor?
Council can absolutely provide whatever direction that you feel is necessary.
Is
as part
everyone
of-
comfortable with direction to administration to bring something as part of Councillor Wegener's motion that could deal with absentee councillors wanting to bring back items? Councillor Langmaid, then Councillor Peterson.
I would be supportive of having it as part of the motion, meaning delaying a decision on this motion until we have it. I'd be happy to consider it at a different time, perhaps when the bylaw comes back to us, just at a separate time. I do think it's worth noting that it is incumbent on councillors to attend these meetings, and just because you have a conflicting engagement doesn't necessarily mean that you get to come back and undo everything that was done. As long as there's quorum within the meeting and everything's been followed by the procedural bylaw in order to hold a legal and lawful meeting with the number of councillors required, then those decisions must also be supported by council according to our code of conduct. It does not state there is no exemption if you just aren't there. Oh yes, they did something, I wasn't there to. Yeah, it's incumbent on us as councillors. We've been elected into these positions to attend and to be present. And I don't think it would be, just my comment on it is, I don't think it would be appropriate to provide a note for someone who was unable to be there. And I would hold myself to that same standard.
Councillor Wegener, well, I guess now that the motion's on the floor, it belongs to all of us. Maybe we should consider, and Kevin CAO Scoble has cautioned us at times to not make decisions on the same night, that sometimes you need to take a little more time. So we could possibly direct administration. Councillor Peterson, did you want to interject?
Your worship, we can still do first reading, and there's lots of time to bring it back, right?
Oh, after, okay, yeah, okay.
And the other thing, you know, Councillor Wiley, I take to heart your point. There are sometimes unavoidable times people get sick and they can't come and they can't be here. But on the other hand, the opposite of what you described, you know, a councillor could literally step away from a meeting when they know that a motion was going to pass or that an action was going to be taken by the council with which they didn't agree, and they could deliberately step away so that they could come back to challenge it later. So to me, the MGA speaks to it very clearly. There's a quorum, you can vote, the vote stands. And so, you know, I'm happy to discuss it further. I think there's wisdom in just doing a first reading tonight, putting it on the table, and there's lots of time then for people to think about it.
But our motion tonight is just to bring the bylaw.
To bring it back, that's right.
okay.
Yeah, and then we can do first reading, we can still have more time. There's no rush on this, Your Worship.
Okay. And Councillor Wegener, you didn't specify a date that you wanted this to come to us? Just at a future time?
Just at a future time when administration has time to look at it and see if there's any issues with the way it's written.
Okay. Councillor Wiley?
I'll just ask another scenario too for the rest of council to consider is what would tonight's crosswalk resolution have looked like? So a resolution was being brought back to us from administration. And so then is this going to impede a councillor's voting against the resolution that's being brought from administration?
Well, I
You
think
can see there
tonight's
might be some
was,
difficulties.
tonight's was based on the fact that the initial choice of the pathway by the canal was on the WID right-of-way. So we really couldn't have given permission to them do a rainbow crosswalk on that pathway because it wasn't on our land. And so that's why administration would have brought that specific thing back to us.
Sure, but nevertheless, it was brought back. So then, as a councillor, I would then presumably be allowed to vote against the resolution being brought from administration. So this wouldn't have even changed my ability to have the conversation we had tonight.
I don't think so.
No.
Okay, Councillor Langmaid?
I think it's just worth pointing out that in the end tonight, the motion that was passed for the Pride Crosswalk was actually an amendment to a resolution, not, even though it was written, you know, our skeleton minutes suggested to rescind the bylaw, which would be in alignment with our current procedural bylaw. What actually happened in the end was an amendment, and this motion specifically refers to a motion to rescind. So it's kind of moot.
All right, so I think everyone understands the motion that's been presented by Councillor Wegener, and there's an opportunity when it comes back to bylaw, in bylaw form. We have 3 readings, and once we get to second reading, then we can discuss and put the finishing touches on it. We'll have time to read it through, look at some of the options and alternatives that are offered by admin, and we can make a good decision in that context then. So we have that motion on the floor, and
Sorry, can I just ask?
Councillor Montgomery.
John, I'm going to ask you a question again.
I don't like this.
This is obviously, like, this already took place, but, so we can amend motions that were passed at previous meetings? Okay. So, like, we don't even have to rescind something necessarily, we could just amend it, you know, like, okay, I see. Thank you.
All right, so is everyone comfortable with the motion on the floor? Hopefully you at home are comfortable. I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? So the motion is carried. We now move on to 10.3 question and answer period. Oh, we have comments? Council statements, sorry.
Your Worship, I just wanted to, with your tolerance for less than, I just distributed these course workshop and program guideline from the Wheatland Society of the Arts tonight. Just want to commend them for almost quadrupling their offerings within their organization to community. And I'd also like to commend the work that the town of Strathmore has done on the Culture Days work upcoming, and how all of community has really bought into the work that the town has done. And so it's just great seeing hundreds more people come into our downtown. And I encourage everybody to have a look at the new program guide from the Wheatland Society of the Arts. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. And now we move on to 10.3 question and answer period. And seeing that we have none, I'll move on to administrative inquiries. Anything? Do we have any administrative inquiries? No? Then notices of motion, 10.5. We have none. And that brings us to a motion to go into closed meeting. Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, I'd move that council go into closed session at 7:58.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor?